habit. So, a habit is an acquired pattern of behavior that is regularly repeated until it becomes almost involuntary. Habits usually develop to help us lower stress or meet an emotional need. They may serve us when we start them and then cease to be useful. Sometimes habits can be unconscious. Sometimes habits are things that we're not aware of. Um, and I may not be aware that I'm interrupting. I'm just aware that in the moment I'm feeling anxious and I want to kind of hear. I don't want you to take the long way around. I want you just to get to the point. Um, uh, and sometimes habits can be much more conscious. Like I'm actively going to make a choice to have these potato chips because they taste good and I've had a bad day. Um, so habits often consist of loops, and these loops have parts to them. There's a trigger or a cue, and there's a routine or a behavior as a result of that trigger, and then there's a routine or behavior, and then that occurs, and then there's a result, and that's kind of a sign that the habit is complete. So, changing a habit means targeting one of these three parts, but it also means practicing some mindfulness when you're engaging in it. And this mindfulness, this self awareness, really goes back to metacognition. You have to be aware that you're doing the habit and then evaluate yourself. Oh, I'm doing that habit without judgment, and then be able to say, okay, what am I going to do differently to try to change that? So this is really important um, uh, to be able to think about, because I think a lot of times what happens is that we judge ourselves for our habits. So we might be triggered or by something, and maybe your boss yelled at you. Your boss was unhappy with your work, and that's a trigger. I'm uncomfortable. I'm feeling bad about myself, and the routine is I'm going to get a bag of potato chips. That's what makes me feel better, and then the result is that I finished the potato chips. But do I really feel better? Do I really feel like I was able to that habit actually did its purpose, which was to soothe me and make me feel good about myself? So noticing the habit without judgment is really critical towards changing it. Instead of telling yourself negative things about the habit, like, ugh, what's wrong with me that I like these potato chips, or why do I interrupt, or whatever your habit is, we want to remember that it once served a purpose and now it doesn't. Um, and this is what the research on habits show for people who don't have ADHD. But I think that we have to talk a little bit about the difference between having a habit and being impulsive. Because sometimes interrupting is an impulse, right? You're not thinking before you're speaking, you're just speaking. And sometimes interrupting is a habit that you're doing in because there's something else going on for you. Like, I don't really want to hear this story, but I don't want to hurt that person's feelings. Or my mind has drifted. So we want to sort of differentiate between the habit and the impulse, and that's hard for a lot of people with ADHD. Um, so let's see what we can do about this. Um, okay, so we've talked about that a habit is an acquired pattern of behavior that regularly is repeated until it becomes almost involuntary. That habits usually develop to help us lower stress or meet an emotional need. They may serve us when we start them, but then they can cease to be useful. Habits can be unconscious as well. You may not be aware that you're engaging in this particular behavior, and then suddenly you realize, oh, I'm doing that thing again. Or you may make a conscious choice, as I said, which is like, I'm feeling bad about my presentation at work. I'm going to go get myself a coffee and a sweet treat. Habits consist of loops. So there's a trigger or a cue, something that sets us off. Then there's a routine or a behavior that follows that. And then there's a result that the habit is complete, it's finished. Changing a habit means targeting one of these three parts. So I'm going to pay attention to the triggers, or I'm going to respond in a non-routine way. And I'm not going to use certain types, I'm not going to look for certain types of results or rewards. But this requires us practicing mindfulness, that you're actually engaging in the habit without negative judgment. And this is where metacognition comes in. I'm aware that I'm doing something. I have some attentive awareness about what I'm doing, and I'm evaluating myself. I see that I'm doing this, um, and I'm going to make a different choice. And this is very difficult for many of us, people with ADHD and people without, because noticing the habit without judging it is the key toward changing it. But what we do is we tell ourselves negative things about the habit. Um, what's wrong with us, what's wrong with doing that thing, instead of being able to talk to ourselves with more compassion and say, this habit once served a purpose and now it doesn't. That's what we want to pay attention to. Look at how the habit is affecting you now. Let's go back. I see a number of comments here. Let's see. Interrupting, um, starting tasks and not finishing before starting another, clutter, making lists of things to do, but having too many items I never get around to, being more productive, eating fatty, sugary food, interrupting house chores, clutter, disorganized at work, not having a routine, task initiation, avoidance for overwhelming tasks, definitely interrupting, but mostly being able to consistently keep with a routine when it gets disrupted. I struggle to get started with any routine, even when it is slightly disrupted. Okay, so one of the things that we're talking about is this idea of how it can be really frustrating to stick with something. So the challenge of sustained attention or practice. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Let's see. Hi, Lynn. Okay, I think there are more comments. Let me see. Hold on, I'm having a little computer thing. One of my screens is too big. There we go. Okay, Becky, my friend makes fun of me for keeping boxes just in case. It hurt to throw out a perfectly good shoebox yesterday. Yes, soothed in the moment, but then have to stack more because the fix ended with the damn chips. Okay. Hello, going to bed and waking up too late. Okay, so it sounds like we're a group of adults here who are really aware of some of our habits. Um, I know one of my habits is sometimes I might stay up and watch TV too late because it feels like, oh, I need a little relaxing. But really, what would serve me better is to go upstairs and read and do a little stretching and then get in bed or something like that. So I want to give you an example of an anxiety related habit. So the trigger might be feeling anxious about work. The behavior is I'm going to watch TV because I'm feeling anxious about work. And the result is I'm temporarily distracted from my anxiety. So that's the reward. But I also end up having, there's a negative consequence to that so-called reward, which is I have inadequate sleep because I stay up too late. So the reward of a habit, particularly a habit that isn't serving us, it seems glossy and it seems like it's really going to actually feel good and get us through to a better place when in the moment it might do it, but in the long run it doesn't. And that's part of how how that sort of now not now aspect of the ADHD brain works. In the moment, having that sugary snack or not being able to get rid of the box or feeling like I can't, I'm just going to leave the clutter. In the moment, that might feel better because it doesn't challenge you to actually deal with what's bothering you. But in the long run, that's actually not functional. It's a dysfunctional loop, right? Because the result is not helping you move yourself forward in your life in the way that you want to. So, an example of the same trigger. I'm feeling anxious about work. I would change for me. I would change the behavior. I would be like, instead of watching TV, I'm going to make a different choice. How am I going to remind myself of that choice? I'm going to put an alarm on my phone that says go upstairs at a certain time. Or maybe I'll make a list of alternative things to do instead of watching TV. And then the result will be I may feel some anxiety. I may not feel that same kind of distraction, but after that, in that process of this new result, I may have actually lower anxiety. Old habits are tough to break because they're familiar. They're very easy to do. It feels safe to do them, and they are connected to certain beliefs about ourselves. So, what is the belief about yourself that's connected to a habit that you're struggling with? Put that up in the chat because I think we all could see that. I think for me, I have to think a little bit about the belief around interrupting. But maybe the belief around interrupting might be I'll forget what I'm going to say, or people don't have time for me, so they're not going to listen, so I better get that out first. Maybe what I have to say might not be that important. I'm just throwing out different ideas about it. But I think that, in some of the other things that you've talked about in terms of different kinds of habits, um, it would be helpful to think about what is the belief that's associated with the habit. So for me, I have a habit of really, uh, it's a good habit, I think. I exercise every day, or I try to. And today was a day where I did not exercise. And I definitely feel a little different. I don't feel as good. I don't get that endorphin rush. Um, but I'm also telling myself, you didn't sleep well last night. So it's okay not to actually engage in that habit. What's the alternative habit? The alternative habit was that I took my dog for a nice walk and I didn't push myself in the same way. And I still enjoyed that. So one of the things that we have to learn is, what is that habit? How is that habit serving us? What's that need underneath the habit that we're trying to meet or trying to avoid? And how can we find a replacement behavior or a replacement choice? Because it's that replacement choice that brings us up into adulthood instead of living in a limited core belief from childhood. So let's see what some people are saying about what's underlying these habits. Let's see. Michelle, that I don't know enough. I'm not capable of doing the daunting task. Cassandra, for interrupting, I'm afraid if I wait, the thing I want to say won't be relevant. I also have to really refrain from info dumping on people when we are talking about something that I'm really interested in. Excellent insight. Bob, saving boxes, belief, disastrous, dislocating, and unexpected change will come like moving. Okay, that's very clear. Jessica, I can get it done tomorrow is a belief. All right. Becky, can some come from child of depression era parents who save things, bread bags? Oh yeah, absolutely. The sense of there's not enough. Kristen, if I can't do it at all, then I'm not doing any of it. Perfectionism. Okay. Laura, task initiation. My belief is I can't, but I don't try, so how do I know? Cassandra, I also struggle with dominating the conversation. I have to make myself remember that someone else is present in the conversation and I have to ask them questions. Great. So I love when you share your personal insights about your lives. It's very moving, and it also kind of shows our common humanity. So when we are making a shift to creating and sustaining new habits, we have to set our goal. We have to do it daily, no matter how small, and we have to encourage ourselves to keep going. Even if even if one day we skip it, or we might need to tweak it if it's not going the way we want. I'll talk about that in a minute. And we have to deal with the part of ourselves that is connected to the old habit. We want to talk back to that part of ourselves, have a conversation, treat it with compassion, not aggression, instead of, ugh, what's wrong with me? Why do you save all these boxes? We're not moving anytime soon. You might say, I learned never to give things away because my parents grew up in the Depression, and you never know when something could happen where I might need a box. So it's hard for me to let that go. How would you speak back to that? Maybe to say, it seems hard to let these boxes go, but if you need boxes in the future, you can get them. And they're taking up a lot of space which makes you feel uncomfortable in your room. So, what we want to figure out how to do, and Judson Brewer talks about this in his book Unwinding Anxiety, is to update the reward values. So the reward of having those boxes around is that no matter what, you'll always have a box, right? That's the reward. Um, what could be a different reward? So what he's saying is that we look at what the fear is, what that negative self-belief is, and then we shift the reward to something that actually um, makes more sense in our lives today. So let's see some of these comments. I see them flying fast and furious. Hold on. Nick, keeping half of clasps that break, knowing I will forget where I put them the one time I need them in the next 5 years. I feel guilty tossing it and buying it again. Always working new jobs because I get bored or hurt by something a boss said or did. Right. So I'm going to look at the first part of that, Nick, which is keeping clasps that break, knowing you'll forget where you put them. So unless you have a special box that says broken clasps and you put them in there, there's no point in saving those clasps. And I think that what's hard is this idea that maybe someday I'm going to need it. And what I want to suggest to you is if maybe someday occurs and you do need it and you don't have it, what is the worst case scenario? You'd have to go out to buy one. Maybe you'd borrow one from someone. I think it's important when we have these fears or these concerns that are attached to habits that may actually be irrational, that we take some time and follow it to the end. What if I don't have a clasp when I need it? And then what? And then what? So that we can kind of see, what? Actually, I can change this habit because this outcome is not so dire. Let's see. I struggle with dominating in conversation, how to do this. If I can't do it, then I'm not going to do it at all. Right. So when you struggle with dominating conversation, and then I'm actually presenting about social anxiety on Wednesday for an attitude webinar. So I hope you'll come because I'm going to talk about how to deal with conversations for adults with ADHD. But when you're dominating a conversation, you're not actually meeting the person where they are and you're not listening. And so, what we want to do is practice listening more and speaking um, a little bit less, but speaking carefully and on point to what the conversation is. That there's some anxiety that what you need to say or your participation or somehow the way that you're going to matter in this conversation is not actually occurring. Marie, I jumped to defend myself. Mika, I dominate conversations as well. I didn't know that was part of ADHD. It is part of ADHD because it has to do with verbal impulse control and also metacognition, perception of how you are in space and in relationship to other people and how people are responding to you. When you're dominating conversation, you may not be aware that people aren't listening. Like you've gone beyond the time in which people had attention for you, and that is something information that we need to take in through their faces, through their body language, and a sense of telling a story from a beginning, middle and end that's related to the topic at hand. Need to keep walking. I feel better. Okay, thank you, Annie. Belief, the house should always be clean. I got stressed and start cleaning every time. I try to think like it will be messy again, so why should I stress myself every time? So Anne, this is a really good point. So the belief is the house should always be clean. What the operative word here is should, right? Houses are never always clean. They're clean for the, maybe hour or hour and a half after you clean them, maybe 2 or 3 hours, and then they naturally kind of, there's a chaos that happens, an entropy of, so as it were. And so the expectation that you're having that your house should always be clean is part of what's holding you back. It's that belief that I have to keep cleaning so the house is always clean. And what I would suggest maybe is shifting that to, I'd like the house to be tidy before I go to bed, so things are in their place. And I'm going to do a deep clean twice a week or once a week or once a month, depending on what makes sense for you. Becky, I actually gave them away to someone who is moving. Good for you. Bob, good food for thought on boxes. I'll work on it. I could literally free up the equivalent of 2 rooms. Right, Bob. And how would you feel if you had those rooms? Is there something about having that open space that makes you feel uncomfortable? If so, what? Let's take a look at that and deal with that rather than actually moving the box, rather and move the boxes out and sit with the open space and what that feels like to you. Jessica, going to bed. I have to get this done now and completed to what is essential and sleep so I can be a patient parent. I love that. Cassandra, while many can keep a house that looks like it is in a magazine all the time, that isn't the norm for many people. You have to shed the expectations of other people and work to find the level of clean that works for you. I totally agree. And don't worry about what anyone else thinks. We live in our homes, and sometimes our energy isn't there to clean it all. It's okay to listen to your body. Really, it's just about not worrying what other people think. If they don't like your house, they can clean it. I agree. And also, is the television camera coming in to check on the status of your house? I don't think so. Okay, great. So let's look at how we are going to break down some old habits and build some new ones. So the first thing we're going to do is pick one habit to focus on. Look around your life for a minute. Think about it. Your house, your job, something in your relationships, in your routine. Select the one thing that triggers you that you would like to see differently. Okay? Pick one thing. We can only change one thing at a time. And in that habit loop of trigger, behavior, and result or reward, we want to pick a place in there. So we're going to choose one thing, okay? Because for me, I feel like I can't always choose what's going to trigger me. There's a lot of things out there that trigger me, and a lot of things that trigger everybody. We may not be able to control those or name those, but what we can do is choose how we respond to those triggers and make a different choice. And that's where I think building habits comes in. So the first thing is to choose one habit, okay? Now, the second thing is to choose a practical time frame with which you're going to attempt to work on this habit. What does it look like to work on this habit? Does this mean, every day, all day, 3 times a day, once a day? What is a compassionate and kind way that you can work on this habit? Because changing habits takes time. It takes practice, and habits will push up against you. They'll fight, fight, fight to try to hold on to the influence that they've had. So we want to choose a time frame. Maybe I'm going to try this way for a week. And I'm going to set my phone and in that and for a day, and I'm going to check in with myself then and see how it's going. Or I'm going to do this with my partner or a friend or my family. We're all going to pick a habit that we would like to see differently, and we're going to come back together in a week and see how it's going. Then you can tweak it. Then you can try it a different way or continue the same. But generally, you want to set a goal for about 3 months and not 3 years or a whole year, because that can be overwhelming. You want to assess your progress over time. And that doesn't mean daily, it might mean weekly or monthly. Okay, let's see what some of the comments are here. Um, how do you get over the thought that every cleaning action has prerequisite actions to the one you want to start with? I get overwhelmed and not do anything. Um, okay, Diana, I think what you're saying is like, well, before I clean the kitchen, I need to clean off the counters. And then when I clean off the counters, I've got to figure out where to put all the things that are on the counters. So why bother? I don't do it. I think that's what you're saying. And what I would do is break down tasks into smaller pieces. So if the goal is to clean the kitchen, like deep clean the kitchen, then one day or one week, you deal with the surfaces, the counters, and get everything off the counters and get somebody to help you or find boxes. Boxes can be useful to put things in. I personally like accordion folders. I think those are better because you can label them. And then deal with the deeper cleaning aspects of the kitchen. Maybe it's the surface, maybe it's the refrigerator. Pick one thing at a time. Fabiola, I'm able to go to bed at a certain time, but then feel the urge to look at my phone. Right. And so maybe one habit is to put your phone across the room, not next to you. Because if you're looking at your phone when it's next to you, then that's easy. But if it's across the room, it's a lot harder. So we might want to, sort of change the cue is, in this case, the trigger is right there, and you can change it by moving it. Judy, I get to work wherever I need to go on time. Okay, that's fabulous. That's the goal that you want to change. Good. Diana, yep, I feel that. Okay. All right, so we've now chosen one habit and we've chosen a practical time frame. So now what we're going to do is we're going to tap into a growth mindset. So take a minute and think about your mentality around this thing that you want to change. The process of change requires having a growth mindset. This is a mindset that means being human, means living and learning. You're going to make mistakes, but instead of berating yourself or your kids or your partner for the fumbles, you're going to pause, you're going to regroup, and tweak what you're doing. It's this capacity to pivot that encourages us to keep going and growing. Habits take time and practice, and especially if we're trying to undo something that's familiar. Okay, that's going to take extra effort, extra time, and an extra dose of a growth mindset because you will make mistakes, you will stumble, it will feel uncomfortable. The comfortable thing is the thing that actually isn't serving you anymore. So let's see what we have here. Okay. Stephanie, my problem when cleaning is not knowing where to put stuff. Okay, so I walk in a circle after circle trying to figure that out. So I think, Stephanie, a lot of people have that struggle, and everything needs to have a place. My dad always used to say, everything has a place, right? So things need a place to live. So, what is the place to live for things that you have? And if you don't know what the place to live is when you're doing it, maybe you need an interim storage place. So I don't know where this goes. I'm going to put it here and then I'm going to get someone to help me sort that, like on the phone, a friend or my coach or my therapist, because right now my goal, my bigger goal is cleaning, not necessarily wandering around with where do I put these butter knives that someone gave me and which I don't like and I don't want to keep. And so you might want to have a box for I don't know what to do with this and put it in there. And you might want to have a box for that says keeping but dealing with it later, something like that. Okay. Fabiola, you're welcome. And my husband has a habit of buying things that's cheap and then ending up not using it at all. So now we have 20 butter knives. I hadn't even read what you said about butter knives. It must have been the universe talking to me about butter knives. 10 barbecue thermometers, anything you can think about. It seems to me that I think the question is, something to talk about with your husband, like, why spend the money on something that you don't need, even if it's cheap? So can you sell it? had a yard sale? Can you give it away at a party where you give gifts as jokes, or can you take it to a shelter and maybe someone will get it there, or even the Salvation Army. Cassandra, decide what will bring you peace the most. Okay. I started with doing a reset of my kitchen one day and then picked one or two things to focus on. To start, I made sure that the dishes were done every day and my sink was empty and the counters were wiped down before I went to bed every single day. That's great. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're starting in with a few things that you can handle. The dishes are done, the sink is empty, the counters are wiped down. That's my goal. And when I do that for a while, then I'm going to maybe feel like I'm ready to take on something else. Waking up to clear counters and an empty sink in the morning sets me up for peace in my day. Breakfast is easier because I don't feel behind before I start. Dinner is easy when breakfast and lunch can be cleaned up. That leaves me with energy to do other things like a quick tidy of other areas. Also, set a 10-minute timer and pick one hot spot that you can work on in that time and do that once a day until the area is clean. So I really like what Cassandra's saying because she's narrowing the focus and helping us set up a new routine. So she's breaking the habit of I need to clean the whole kitchen to feel good and creating a new one, which is I'm going to do the sink and the counters, and that's it. And then that will bring me enough space, enough peace of mind that I can go forward. Becky, I'm gathering boxes to put out front, but on my way downstairs, I see a sock dropped. The next thing I know, I'm gathering laundry. But then I think I shouldn't do laundry because I need hot water for the dishes or to take a bath. Okay, so what happens to you is you're distracted by what comes right in front of you, right? That is very common for people with ADHD. And I think in some ways, what you might want to say, even though you see that sock, which is sock, I'm going to put you here. I'm going to continue with boxes, like to repeat to yourself, what was my goal? My goal was boxes. I'm going to work on the boxes. Then I can come back and deal with the random sock and the possibility of laundry or dishes. Laura, maybe pick and write down the one task. I agree. And I think that's really important. If you're tempted to go off course or do something else, write that on the other side and do it when finished. That's a lovely idea to have a piece of paper or post-it or something where you write your task that you're working on. And then if you're, and if there's something that tempts you, you can write it on the back. So if there's time, you could go to it. I love that idea. Mika, I hate that when I try to keep my drawer organized, it always ends up looking like a tornado hit it. My husband is military, so his is very neat. You're judging your drawers by his drawers, and that doesn't seem fair. You just might have more stuff. My husband's drawers are very neat. He has less stuff. I like colorful socks. I have lots of colorful socks. So my sock drawer is very full. He has like 6 pairs of boring black socks. Okay, that's what he has. He can keep them all nice and neat. And I have like 15 pairs of all kinds of socks, wool socks, cotton socks, tights that are colorful. That's just who I am. And so, I bought these drawer dividers and so that helps me. I put that in, so I have like the wool socks in one little area and the cotton socks in another and the sports socks somewhere else. But I think that you want to keep your drawer organized in a way that fits who you are. So I have these compartments and that works for me, and he has all the socks in one drawer and they're all the same color. That works for him. Let's see. Okay, thank you for those decluttering ideas. Cassandra, I'm learning that if I can't find a place for it, I have a bin with those things that will decide can be tossed or donated. I set a goal to donate or throw out 25 items from my house every month. I like that a lot. So like if you don't know what you're doing, this is very Marie Kondo, you put it in the box, and if at the end of the month you still haven't used it or felt a need for it, off it can go. So one of the things that we're talking about here, which I think is very helpful for habits, is how to fine tune your goals and be specific. So we want to make our goals as specific as possible. So being more organized is a great goal, but it isn't precise enough to lead you to do anything differently. Whereas being more organized with your drawers or your bills or your clothes. This is all more exact and will likely result in more success for you. Um, he doesn't want to let go. That's hard. Well, then maybe he can have his own box of where he buys the stuff that doesn't serve you, and perhaps have a conversation about what is his fear around letting go. Fabiola, how do you let go of something you bought on impulse but don't really like or use, but feel guilty because you spent the money and it's brand new? I think that you can take it to like a consignment store. You could give it as a gift. If it's too late to return it, I would say return it if you can. And to remind yourself, maybe the next time you're shopping, if you see something that you like and you're not sure, ask them to hold it. And if they won't hold it, think about it and come back. You're going to take a chance, or ask them what their return policy is. Because if you buy something and then you get home and you have buyer's remorse, you can just return it very, very quickly. And that's better than this kind of what I'm hearing from people is so much clutter. Julia, I literally just sat down to watch this amidst cleaning the house. I need to refocus. Laura, can you box them up and put them in the garage? If they're still there in 3 months, they know they're not needed. Great suggestion. That was kind of what I was saying. Put them in a box, and in a month or two, if they're still there, you get rid of them. Fabiola, I have a ton of colorful socks too. They make me happy. Yes, I am currently wearing purple socks with sun and moon images. Um, it's okay to laugh here. Yeah, with, not at. Yep. Mark, hi all. I'm not sure if my question is relevant to the topic. Is there a way to overcome ADHD without medication, or perhaps train the brain to be more organized than having things all over the place? Yes, of course, because pills don't teach skills. Medication makes you more available to learn the skills, but it doesn't actually solve the issues for you. I think that there are lots of webinars on attitude, and coaches and therapists who could help you learn how to learn the skills you need to help you with your executive functioning challenges. Leslie, in New York City, we have Facebook groups called Buy Nothing, by neighborhood. I'm not sure if other towns have it. It's great for giving stuff away. The potential addictive quality is taking too much of other people's stuff and going on Facebook and getting stuck and wasting time. Yes, that's true. But also the benefit is like it's a community of trading, and that's wonderful. Susan, I got rid of 2 things in my closet. When I buy one new thing. That's also a great way to deal with your habit. Jennifer, I buy lots of organizing products, but I don't use them after several months. I organize my closet for a few weeks and then it's back to things shoved in whenever. So one thing I would suggest to you, Jennifer, is when you notice that you're in that shoving inside again pattern, that would be a great time to call a stop and set aside some time for cleaning. Because what happens is the more that you keep shoving in, the more that habit is going to take hold and have strength. Instead of noticing that habit, we're talking about that self-evaluation. I'm shoving things in. I need to make time. I mean, to make a date with myself to get organized again. Sherry, yep, I finally get stuff organized, only undo it over time before I finish the other organizing projects I need. Right, so we want to remember to think sequentially here. You do something and you focus on that. And when that feels like it's in a good, it's happening more on its own, it's becoming its own healthy habit, then you can work on something else. I think one of the things that happens is for people is they make progress on something and then they quickly want to make progress somewhere else, and you're moving too fast. You really want to get that new habit so you're not even thinking about it. I'm going to clean up the sink and wipe the counters every night before bed. It's just what I do. And then you can add in another habit that is a change. And I have a rule in mind, And I have that rule in mind. I've been telling him we have a garage full of the stuff he has collected. Actually, I called him a hoarder because it's uncontrollable. Right. So I think that the thing to do, Anne, is to really say, we're gonna to take the lead here and say, I want to have a yard sale or a tag sale, and we're gonna clean out the garage because we need space, and we're not using this stuff. And at some point, we have to let it go. And if he can't, then maybe he needs to see a professional. Randy Frost has written a lot about hoarding, so that's someone you might want to check on. Cassandra, another thing that helps make cleaning more enjoyable is to splurge on nice cleaning products. I've decided if I have to clean, I'm going to enjoy the tools I use. And if I'm using them regularly, it's not wasted money. I buy the gadgets. That makes me happy while I'm cleaning. Also, I'm a big fan of music while cleaning, just saying, or podcast. Bob, wait a month or two. Most of my put away things have been there over 10 years. I can't even imagine. Seriously. Thanks. Yeah, put them away, wait a month or two, and then, if you need to wait longer, that's fine. But I think Marie Kondo says if you've not used something in a year, or you don't need it. So that would be the, outside. But sometimes the things that you're putting in your boxes that you don't think you need, you've already had for 10 years and you haven't used. So just saying. Although it is a little bit hard with COVID because our lives have been so unpredictable and different, that we have not used some things. So we might want to wait 6 months to see how things happen. Diana, still have baby clothes to go through, and my kids are beyond the baby years. Yes, I can understand that. I saved a few things. I wish I'd saved more, but oh well. I didn't, because I gave them to other people to enjoy. And I feel good about that. And I think that's something that's worth saying. When you give your stuff away that you're not using, someone else may enjoy it. Someone else may really need it. And that's an act of in Yiddish we say it's a mitzvah. It's something that makes you feel good, that you do for someone that makes them feel good. And I love that term. And I think that when you do that, it's like you feel good because you're helping. Like I had a yard sale with my daughter in September, and we got rid of a bunch of stuff. And it was hard for me, some of the stuff to let go of. But people got it. They were so excited. Oh, I love this chair. It's going to look so great here. And these dishes are so nice. I'm excited. And I was like, okay, bye. Letting it go, hoping I don't ever need it. And so it is a challenge. It's because we when we give parts of our stuff away, we give away parts of our history, and that can be hard. So if you're worried about it, take a picture and you can save it forever. Fabiola, this is the last question. Sorry for another question, but how do you deal with paperwork? I have, oops, sorry. Have a pile on my desk and in boxes and just feel overwhelmed looking at it and not even knowing where to start. So I think when there's a lot of paperwork, I do think that's important to get an accordion folder and to be able to just start with one pile. I'm going to, and set a timer. I'm going to do this one pile for 15 minutes. That's it. Or you can, the tomato timer thing. So I'm going to do this one thing for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to take a break, and that's going to be it for today. And tomorrow I'll come back and I'll do the next thing for 20 minutes. Some amount of time that's manageable for you so that you feel like you're making progress through it, but you're not trying to tackle the whole thing, because you won't be able to do that and you'll start to just feel more and more overwhelmed and more depleted. Susan, what a lovely thought to end us on. COVID brought so much general stress. Finally feeling spring is real this year. More positive energy. Well, I hope that you can take some of this positive energy and tweak a habit of yours, something that you feel like I'm ready to change this. I'm ready to look at that cycle of trigger, behavior, and result/reward, and see what I want to do differently. I'm going to pick one thing. I'm going to pick a practical time frame, and I'm going to fine tune my goals and then focus on the growth mindset. I'm going to try it. I'm going to see what happens. I might try to tweak it. I'm going to just work on this one habit, make progress. And let's check in a few weeks to see how you're doing on your one habit. Okay? Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next Friday. Take care. Bye bye.